Hello, and welcome to ELA Plus, your free guide to English studies and the English language arts. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. In today's video lesson, we're going to learn about the Anapest, and this will be the final video lesson we offer on the major metrical feet. We will, however, offer a few more video lessons on the minor metrical feet. But for now, let's get into the Anapest. The first thing we'll do in this video lesson is define the term Anapest. After that, we'll talk about the phonaesthetics of anapestic meter. Then, in order to get a better understanding of these phonaesthetics, we'll read a little bit of a poem from Lord Byron. And then, as always, we'll wrap things up with some comprehension questions. Over in the box, you'll find 4 definitions of the term Anapest. The first definition comes from the book Understanding Poetry. The authors there define the term as, quote, 2 unaccented syllables followed by an accented syllable. Next up, we have the Poetry Foundation, and they define the term as a metrical foot consisting of 2 unaccented syllables followed by an accented syllable. Then we have a Poetry Handbook by the great Mary Oliver, and she defines the term as 2 light stresses followed by a heavy stress. Finally, we have the ever-reliable Norton Anthology of Poetry, and they define the Anapest as a 3-syllable foot consisting of 2 unaccented syllables followed by 1 accented syllable. From these definitions, we learn that an Anapest is a metrical foot, an Anapest is a 3-syllable metrical foot, and we learn that the Anapest has the metrical pattern of unstressed syllable, unstressed syllable, stressed syllable. Therefore, ELA Plus defines the term Anapest as a 3-syllable foot consisting of 2 unstressed syllables followed by a stressed syllable. One way to help yourself remember this metrical pattern is to recall the phrase strike up. In fact, the word anapestic comes from the Greek word meaning roughly to strike up. This phrase strike up will help you remember the metrical pattern because it'll make you think that we start low with these 2 unstressed syllables, and then we strike up to this stressed syllable. So now let's chat for a little bit about the phonaesthetics of the Anapest, or more specifically, the phonaesthetics of anapestic meter. There are 2 things that you're going to need to keep in mind. The first thing is that the Anapest is somewhat similar to the iamb, and that they both conclude with a stressed syllable. This means that they're rising feet. Relatedly, the Anapest, like the iamb, when it concludes a rhymed line, it means that that line is what we call a masculine rhyme, because it ends with a stressed syllable. Secondly, the Anapest is the opposite of a dactyl. The dactyl, as you may recall, is a 3-syllable foot consisting of 1 stressed syllable followed by 2 unstressed syllables. While the Anapest, as we're learning in this video lesson, is a 3-syllable foot consisting of 2 unstressed syllables followed by a stressed syllable. And though these 2 metrical feet are the opposites in terms of their metrical pattern, we actually kind of read them in a similar fashion, phonaesthetically speaking. Like the dactyl, the Anapest is a trisyllabic foot. So phonaesthetically speaking, this means that it will have a kind of rolling sound to it. And there's going to be plenty of room for motion and movement. This means that the Anapest is excellent for narrative poetry. In fact, this is how Annie Finch and Alexandra Oliver, in their book Measure for Measure, an Anthology of Poetic Meters, this is how they describe anapestic verse. Quote, "The anapestic meter lends itself to reading aloud at length, particularly to narrative poetry. This is the meter of The Cat in the Hat, The Night Before Christmas, in Paul Revere's Ride. The 3-syllable foot can feel lullingly or excitingly familiar. There's time to relax and enjoy the story. Or there's room to build to pounding forward momentum, as in how they brought the good news from Gent to X." End quote. To get a taste of this phonaesthetic, let's now listen to one stanza from the mad, bad, and dangerous to know Romantic era English poet Lord Byron. The stanza is from his poem, The Destruction of Sennacherib. And this is a great poem. I'm going to link to it down in the description so you can read the whole thing. For now, however, like I said, we're only going to read the first stanza so we can get an idea of what anapestic meter in verse sounds like and also what it looks like, because we're also going to scan it. So here's that stanza. The Assyrian came down like the wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold. And the sheen of their spears was like the stars on the sea, when the blue wave rolls nightly on deep Galilee. All right, that's the first stanza, as I said. And again, I'm going to link down to it in the description below because it's a rather short poem, and I think you'll enjoy it if you were to read it in its entirety. For now, though, let's go ahead and scan this stanza. Here's the scansion of the stanza. Do you see what makes this anapestic verse? Remember our definition. An anapest is a 3-syllable foot consisting of 2 unstressed syllables followed by a stressed syllable. One thing you may have noticed about this scansion is that the first line might appear to be scanned incorrectly. The word Assyrian, after all, has 4 syllables, doesn't it? But I show 3 here. I mark 3 syllables. Yes, that's true. And this is going to offer us an excellent opportunity to talk about how scansion, that is, the analysis of a poem's rhythmical structure, is not an exact science and is sometimes ambiguous. Here's what Timothy Steele says about the performance of scansion. And Timothy Steele would know because, of course, he is one of the greatest contemporary poets writing in accentual syllabic metrical verse. He says, "It follows that we should, in scanning, refrain from imposing convoluted readings on lines that admit of straightforward interpretation. If we come across a slightly unusual line, like in the poem in this video lesson, we should not jump to the conclusion that the poet has suddenly plunged into an experiment with exotic feet or rhythms. Rather, we should first check to see if the line can be reconciled with the prevailing metrical pattern. If it can, we should assume that the poet is modulating rather than altering the meter." You'll find such modulation, as Steele points out, often when closely clustered syllables are all lightly stressed, which is what we have here in the opening lines of The Destruction of Sennacherib. As Steele says, when this is the case, the odd line should be scanned in communion with the prevailing metrical rhythm of the rest of the poem. So that's what we did here with the first line of The Destruction of Sennacherib. Alright, that brings us to the end of our video lesson on the Anapest. The first thing we did in this video lesson is define the term. After that, we talked a little bit about the phonaesthetics of anapestic meter. And we listened to these phonaesthetics with a reading of Lord Byron's poem, The Destruction of Sennacherib. All that should be enough to teach you that the anapest is a 3-syllable foot consisting of 2 unstressed syllables followed by a stressed syllable. Just to make sure that you got it, let's now go to our comprehension questions. Number 1, what is an anapest? Number 2, which of the following words is an anapest? A, contradict, B, elephant, C, murmuring. Number 3, how is an anapest similar to an iamb? And number 4, what distinguishes an anapest from a dactyl? And that's our video lesson on the Anapest. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. ELA Plus is a free guide to English studies and the English language arts. I'm Brian E. Denton. Until our next lesson, keep reading and take care of yourselves and others. Thank you.